kurejea katika ufalme wake Baba Mungu. Yeye anafurahi, ni raha iliyoje kwa mchungaji kumpata kondoo mmoja kuliko 99. Vivyo hivyo ilivyo mbinguni, mdhambi mmoja anaporejea katika ufalme wake Baba Mungu. Yeye anafurahi, ni raha iliyoje kwa mchungaji kumpata kondoo mmoja kuliko 99. Vivyo hivyo ilivyo mbinguni, mdhambi mmoja anaporejea katika ufalme wake Baba Mungu. Yeye anafurahi.
Asante. Nataka waendelee kuimba. Nataka waendelee kuimba kwa sababu wanaenda recording leo. Mazoezi ya Sabato huwa ni mazuri sana. Nataka waimbe. Sijaambiwa kama kipindi kimeisha. Kimeisha? Kipindi hakijaisha. Dakika 7. Hizo ni kama nyimbo mbili hivi. Sasa nataka muimbe wimbo mmoja alafu tutafunga ndio pia tusicheleweshe vipindi vingine.
Ni usiku huo wa manane, Nikodemo kamwendea Yesu, na wasiwasi moyoni, maswali kichwani, asipate majibu kamwe. Nifanye nini nipate urithi uzima wa milele? Nifanye nini nipate urithi uzima wa milele? Ni usiku huo wa manane, Nikodemo kamwendea Yesu, na wasiwasi moyoni, maswali kichwani, asipate majibu kamwe. Nifanye nini nipate urithi uzima wa milele? Nifanye nini nipate urithi uzima wa milele? Uzima wa milele ni urithi wa hao walokombolewa, wale walojikana nafsi zao na kumkiri Bwana, wamejitwika msalaba wake, wakafa naye, wakafufuka naye, wakuzamishwa ndani ya maji. Uzima wa milele ni urithi wa hao walokombolewa, wale walojikana nafsi zao na kumkiri Bwana, wamejitwika msalaba wake, wakafa naye, wakafufuka naye, wakuzamishwa ndani ya maji. Huenda wewe ndiye Nikodemo, unasita kati ya njia mbili. Amua kubali Yesu, achana ya dunia, azimia ya Kalvari. Mwokozi akusubiri, mikono wazi akuita njoo. Mwokozi akusubiri, mikono wazi akuita njoo. Huenda wewe ndiye Nikodemo, unasita kati ya njia mbili. Amua kubali Yesu, achana ya dunia, azimia ya Kalvari. Mwokozi akusubiri, mikono wazi akuita njoo. Mwokozi akusubiri, mikono wazi akuita njoo. uzima wa milele ni urithi wa hao walokombolewa, wale walojikana nafsi zao na kumkiri Bwana, wamejitwika msalaba wake, wakafa naye, wakafufuka naye kwa kuzamishwa ndani ya maji. Uzima wa milele ni urithi wa hao walokombolewa, wale walojikana nafsi zao na kumkiri Bwana, wamejitwika msalaba wake, wakafa naye, wakafufuka naye kwa kuzamishwa ndani ya maji. Uzima wa milele ni urithi wa hao walokombolewa, wale walojikana nafsi zao na kumkiri Bwana, wamejitwika msalaba wake, wakafa naye, wakafufuka naye kwa kuzamishwa ndani ya maji. Uzima wa milele ni urithi wa hao walokombolewa, wale walojikana nafsi zao na kumkiri Bwana, wamejitwika msalaba wake, wakafa naye, wakafufuka naye kwa kuzamishwa ndani ya maji.
Asante vijana, Mungu azidi kuwabariki, na tunawaombea sana ili ya kwamba recording yenu iweze kwenda vizuri. Tutanunua hizo CD ama DVD kwa uwezo wa Mungu. Nafikiri tumefika mwisho wa kipindi. Nangoja kuelekezwa wimbo mmoja. Asante. Tutaimba wimbo mmoja tunaposubiri tutaimba wimbo namba 70. Wimbo namba 70 tunaposubiri kipindi kinachofuata.
Wapenzi wa Bwana, Dois G.
Wapenzi wa Bwana, ije raha yenu, imbeni nyimbo za raha, imbeni nyimbo za raha, za ibada yenu, za ibada yenu. Twenenda Zayuni, mji mzuri Zayuni, twenenda juu Zayuni, ni maskani ya Mungu. Wasiimbe wao wasioamini, watoto wa Mungu ndio, watoto wa Mungu ndio waimbao chini, waimbao chini. Twenenda Zayuni, mji mzuri Zayuni, twenenda juu Zayuni, ni maskani ya Mungu. Twaona noni baraka za Mungu, tusijafika mbinguni, tusijafika mbinguni, kwenye utukufu, kwenye utukufu. Twenenda Zayuni, mzuri Zayuni, twenenda juu Zayuni, ni maskani ya Mungu. Tutakapomwona masumbuko basi, uwa maji ya uzima, uwa maji ya uzima, anasa halisi, anasa halisi. Twenenda Zayuni, mji mzuri Zayuni, twenenda juu Zayuni, ni maskani ya Mungu.
Naomba msimame hapo. Niruhusu niwasalimu hamjambo. Bwana asifiwe. Kabla sijaingia katika program ambayo inaingia sasa, niruhusu nilete tangazo ambalo lilisaulika asubuhi. We are sad to announce the death of our mother to Brother Pascal Onchangwa. Mamake Pascal Onchangwa ameweza kuaga. Kwa hivyo tafadhali tukumbuke familia hiyo, na those in charge of welfare mtapangilia ili tuweze kujua ni nini itafanyika. Mzee Onchangwa ako nyumbani, lakini mke wake ako hapa Nairobi. Asante. Naomba sasa wote tusimame na wimbo nambari 14, nitembee nawe Mungu.
Nitembee nawe Mungu alivyotembea Eno, mkono wangu ushike, unene nami kwa pole, ingawa njia sioni, Yesu nitembee nawe. Siwezi tembea peke, pana dhoruba mbinguni, mitego ya miguu elfu, adui wengi huzichwa. Uitulize bahari, Yesu nitembee nawe. Ukinishika mkono, anasa kwangu hasara, kwangu nitasafiri, tautwika msalaba, hata mji wa Sayuni, Yesu nitembee nawe.
Tunaomba. Asanti Baba na Mungu wetu, maana umekuwa mwaminifu katika maisha yetu. Lakini tunaloomba ni ya kwamba uweze kutushika mkono, tuweze kutembea nawe katika maisha haya ambayo yamekuwa magumu. Tunapoanza kipindi cha uwakili, Baba, kuwa pamoja nasi. Andaa mioyo yetu na umtumie dada Choice, usungumze nasi yaliyo mapenzi yako. Tumeomba kwa imani katika jina la Yesu. Amen. Basi bila kupoteza wakati, kwa wageni, naitwa David Nyambane, mmoja katika anaohudumu katika kanisa hapa. Naomba nimlete kiongozi wa wakili kanisani, dada Joyce Makori. Karibu.
Happy Sabbath. Happy day. Hamjambo. Hii ni wakati mzuri, tunaenda kujikumbusha kuhusu kuwa wakili ama wakili mwema, na hii idara linatuhusisha sisi wote regardless of age, gender or whichever state, because all of us belong to God and we are all stewards. So tutaangalia kwa ufupi maana ya steward. To be a steward means to preserve, multiply, or utilize the property of the owner in an adequate way. Because we belong to God, and God created us in his image, and he gave man power over everything that he created. And therefore, because he gave man power over everything he created, we become stewards. And to some extent, a steward is a partner and a co-worker with the boss, because we are taking care of what God has created and what God has given us. So it is like we are working with him. We cannot work on our own. So in 1 Corinthians 10:26, as I've said, God is the owner of everything that he has created. And in John chapter 1:3 all the way to 29, it still says that all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. So when you read that chapter, John chapter 1, from verse 3 to 29, it explains all what God has created and the way he would want us to take care of all what he has created. And he still insists that everything belongs to God, including ourselves. So it is easy to acknowledge that everything belongs to God. But as a human being, or the human nature in us, it becomes difficult, because we look at, sometimes you struggle so much to get what you've gotten, be it children, be it what, and here you are told that nothing belongs to you. So as a human being, it is difficult, but we acknowledge that everything, including ourselves, belong to God. And because we belong to God, we really have to take care of what he has endowed us, the powers, within the powers he has given us to do. And this one includes all material possession, our time, gifts, talents, our body, and that one, you can illustrate it using the parable of the rich fool. You find that he did not have much from the beginning, but when he got a large harvest, he forgot that all what he had done and all what he had gotten was belonging to God. And in the long run, he started even wondering, what will I do with this? Where will I put? And the human nature in him, he was even cheated that now he started planning, thinking on how he will come up with big stores and so on, but he did not do that. So everything, our emphasis is, everything belongs to God, including ourselves. And when you look at what we were taken through in the morning, that one is just one bit of a steward. And for you to be a good steward, you have to be wise, because on your own, you cannot be able to make it. So you need to be wise. And for you to be wise, you really have to depend on God, because it is only God who can assist you be able to do what you are supposed to do. So we will look at the steward of time, and that one can be found from Psalms 31, verse 15. Maybe somebody can read it. Psalms 31:15. If you are not ready, I can paraphrase. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from them who persecute me. Because we've said everything belongs to God. So even the time we have is belonging to God. And if we recognize that the time we have belong to God, then we are supposed even to utilize it properly. And by utilizing it properly, you find that you can divide your time wisely, time to be in church the way we are, time to serve others, time to fellowship even with others outside, and even time to do your own things. Because we are human beings, we cannot fail to do our own things for us to live or for us to survive. But when we are doing all that, we have to remember that the time is one of the, as part of a good steward, you need to manage your time properly. Another area of steward is our body. Because we belong to God, our bodies also belong to God. And since our bodies belong to God, we need to take care of them, including what we eat, how we dress, how we walk, name them. Everything that we do with our body, we should remember that we should do it in order to glorify God, not on our own. And that one can be elaborated from the book of Luke, chapter 26, Luke 17, 26 to 30. Somebody to read for us. Luke 17, 26 to 30. So we are reminded that in as much as we are told to enjoy, life, we should do so, but remembering that we belong to God and we need to do it in a godly manner. Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. God wanted human to live forever. But because at one point they forgot themselves, that is why we cannot be able to fulfill the God's intention when he was creating man. So it goes further and says that our Creator God is interested in our health. He owns us, including our bodies. He also wants us to be fit for his purpose. You remember in the morning, we had a topic on health and temperance. We were taken through many aspects of life and the way we should be able to take care of our health. Let's say if you are not physically fit, therefore you cannot be able even to serve God. So we need to check on our health, or we need to be good stewards of our bodies so that we can even be able to serve God and be able to serve others. So, on another aspect of steward is steward of money. We realize that God has blessed us in many ways. He has blessed us with the money or other material things that can be changed to money. So we are being told that in as much as God has blessed us with money or material things that can be changed into money, we need to take care of that. And we need to give the tithe, we need to give offerings, and we need to give other contributions as when need arises. But tithe and offering is a must. And the Bible is very clear on how we need to give. If it is tithe, we need to give 10%, and the rest. Previously, you've heard many speakers speak about tithing or giving or utilizing whatever we have as part of stewardship. So that one is just one aspect of being a good steward. A good steward, you need also to 18 to 20, Genesis 28, 20 to 22, Leviticus 27, 30. There are many verses that you can refer to when you want to know on how to tithe or on how to give. But because we are supposed to be good stewards of what God has given us, and we are supposed even to serve others. We are supposed even to prepare his temple. That is when other types of contributions come in. And that is why I said other contributions may be given as and when required. And if we remember that everything belongs to God, then even giving other contributions as required, either in terms of development of the church or whichever kind of development or activity that is being done in church, if we remember we are good stewards, then we are supposed to do that. We are not supposed to appear as if we are being forced to carry out those activities, because in the long run, we are doing those activities to glorify our God. Then the other aspect of steward is steward of gifts and talents. You find that God has blessed us with different gifts and different talents. So we are supposed to use those gifts according to the way God has blessed us. If you are good in carrying out evangelism, then do it, knowing that that is not not your own gift, but God gave you that gift so that you can spread his word. And by so doing, you are also bringing so many other people to God, those ones who don't know them. And in the event, they'll be able to serve God and serve God well. And you find in the gifts of, in the steward of gifts and talents, this one is given to everybody. Be it a believer or a non-believer, everybody has this kind of gift, and this kind of gift differs from one person to another. So we can use these gifts to serve others or to carry out God's service in any way that might be used to glorify God. God demands faithfulness and not success. So for you to be a good steward, first of all, you have to have faith in God. And by having faith in God, that faith is the one that will enable you be a good steward in whichever aspect of life that you are supposed to, or you find yourself in. Then if you have faith, you will become a good steward. Maybe we read Luke 42 and 43. Luke 12, 42 and 43. So that verse encourages us that God needs us to be faithful. And if we are faithful, then we will be able to rule over whatever he has given us, and will be able to go in the right direction. So in the beginning, you find that God gave Abraham a test. And because God gave Abraham the test, Abraham believed, and Abraham remained faithful. And from the story, or from what we are told about Abraham, we need to be wise. When we are worshiping, we need to be wise. And in order for us to be wise, as I've said, we need to be faithful. And this one we cannot achieve on our own. So we need to believe in God, and we need to have faith that God can give us spiritual intelligence. This spiritual intelligence will help us in many ways. As we were told in the morning that, by the way, the topic we had in the morning is part of being a good steward. And in the morning, we were told that there are many challenges, or there are many disabilities that we have as Christians. So we need spiritual intelligence as part of, as being a good steward. Then you will require spiritual intelligence. This spiritual intelligence will help you identify or be yourself and remain on the track. For instance, with the technology, or with the changes in generation, you find there are so many Bibles coming up, and through that, there are so many verses that can make one move from God. So if, as a good steward, when you have spiritual intelligence and you find yourself in such a situation, then you will be able to recognize that you are moving out of the way, and you will quickly come back. So as a good steward, spiritual intelligence is key. And that is what will help us come back to God, or come back to serve God, or that will help us not be swayed away by, be it technology, be it friends, whichever challenge that one may face. If that person has spiritual intelligence, he will be able to overcome. And then if you have spiritual intelligence, you will quickly remember that there are 10 commandments God gave us, and by applying the 10 commandments, then you cannot easily go away from the right direction. So spiritual intelligence is key. So to sum up on stewardship, we found out that steward, as a good steward, it affects most of what a Christian needs to do or needs to carry out. So being a good steward, you'll be able to remain on the right direction because you will quickly apply the spiritual intelligence that you've been given. So coming back to the steward part of giving, you find that different ways of giving, and they are normally enumerated. Like if you check on the envelope, it is indicated that you need to give 10%, you need to give for combined offering, whichever kind of contribution you are making. So even by indicating the right kind of contribution you intend to give, is also part of being a good steward, because that one will help the department or the treasury allocate that kind of money in the right, or it will be used for the intended purpose. And for those ones who may not know what to do, if it is not indicated, then we have elders, we have deaconry department, then we have the treasury. Plus, you can inquire from anybody whom you feel will be able to assist you in the right manner. So, my humble prayer is God to help us have a spiritual intelligence that will help us be good stewards. Amen.
Asante. Nataka tuimbe wimbo mmoja. Kipindi cha stewardship kimeisha. Tunaposubiri kipindi kingine kiweze kuanza. Tutaimba wimbo namba 32. Wimbo namba 32 tunaposubiri kipindi kinachofuata. Wimbo namba 32, Dois G, tangu kuamini. kuamini jina lake tasifu, tangu kuamini nitalisifu jina lake. Kristo anitosha kweli, tangu kuamini mapenzi yake napenda, tangu kuamini, tangu kuamini jina lake tasifu, tangu kuamini nitalisifu jina lake. Ninalo shuhuda sawa, tangu kuamini linalofukuza shaka, tangu kuamini, tangu kuamini, tangu kuamini jina lake tasifu, tangu kuamini nitalisifu jina lake. Ninalokao tayari, tangu kuamini nililoridhi kwa Yesu, tangu kuamini, tangu kuamini jina lake tasifu, tangu kuamini nitalisifu jina lake. Asante. Tunapoendelea kungoja kuelekezwa, tutaimba namba 150 na asante. Mzee wa kanisa amesema sisi ni kutii, kwa sababu yeye ni mzee wa kanisa. Wimbo namba 151. Uniongoza Mwokozi.
Nipo nami hufurahi, niendapo pote napo, ataniongoza papo, huongoza wanishika kwa mkono wa hakika, nitaandamana naye. Kristo aniongozaye, pengine ni mashakani, nami pengine rahani, ni radhi ijayo yote, yupo nami siku zote, kuongoza wanishika kwa mkono wa hakika, nitaandamana naye. Kristo aniongozaye, mkono akinishika, kamwe sitanung'unika, atakacho niletea ni tayari
Asante, tunazidi kubarikiwa. Ninaelekezwa ya kwamba tunaendelea. Sisi kazi yetu ni kutii, maana Mungu anataka tutii. Ninasikia mtu akisema 58, 58. Zitakuwa nyota tajiri.
Leo ninafikiria nchi nzuri ninayotaka kuiona, nisimamapo karibu na Mwokozi, tajini zitakuwa nyota. Sijui tajini mwangu kama nyota zitang'aa kila wakati, nitakapoamka katika majumba, zitakuwa nyota tajini. Kwa nguvu za Bwana nitafanya kazi, nitavuta roho za watu, niwe na nyota katika taji, Bwana anapotupa tunu. Sijui tajini mwangu kama nyota zitang'aa kila wakati, nitakapoamka katika majumba, zitakuwa nyota tajini. Nitakuwa na furaha nikimwona, kuweka miguuni pake watu waliovutwa kwa ajili ya kazi yangu na roho yake. Sijui tajini mwangu kama nyota zitang'aa kila wakati, nitakapoamka katika majumba, zitakuwa nyota tajini.
Amina. Amina. Amen. Wimbo namba 173, si ndio? Wimbo namba 173, 170. Tutaimba 73 alafu 74. Tena 77. Tutaimba wimbo namba 173 alafu 177.
Mwalimu, hatujui saa, do is E flat. Hatujui saa, E flat.
Hatujui saa, anakuja kwa Bwana, lakini dalili lizasema karibu. Atakaporudi, lakini kwa kweli hatujui saa. Tukeshe, atakuja Mwokozi, haleluya, atakuja kwa fahari ya Baba yake, hatujui saa. Bwana yuko, upenda Bwana kweli katika chuo cha Mungu. Unabii huonyesha kuja kwake, hatujui saa. Atakuja kwa vile tukeshe, atakuja Mwokozi, haleluya, atakuja kwa fahari ya Baba yake, hatujui saa. Tutakesha na tutaomba daima, tutafanya kazi mpaka akija. Tutaimba na tutasoma ishara, hatujui saa. Atakuja japo vile tukeshe, atakuja Mwokozi, haleluya, atakuja kwa fahari ya Baba yake, hatujui saa.
Nafikiri tutamalizia hapo kwa sasa. Mungu awabariki.
Happy Sabbath. Happy Sabbath once more. Ningependa kuchukua fursa hii kuwakaribisha mchana wa leo kwa ajili ya program ya afya, jinsi mzungumzaji alivyowaarifu mapema asubuhi, na nina imani ya kwamba mwishowe tutanufaika kwa njia moja au nyingine. Kama sio sisi kibinafsi, basi wengine watanufaika kupitia kwetu, labda kupitia ujumbe ambao tutapitisha kwao. Kwa hivyo, bila kupoteza wakati, ningependa tuweze kusimama kwa ajili ya ombi. Tuamini, tuombe. Baba na Mungu wetu aishiye juu mbinguni, tuacha kwako mchana wa leo tukiwa na wingi wa shukrani, maana umekuwa nasi, umetulinda, umetuongoza katika kila jambo. Angalia Baba, mtumishi wako ambaye ako mbele yetu, anapoenda kusimama kutuelezea ama kutunufaisha jinsi tunavyofaa kuishi kiafya. Tunaomba Roho wako Mtakatifu aweze kumwongoza ili yale ambayo atanena kwetu yatoke kwako Baba, na zaidi mno mwisho wa siku tuweze kunufaika kwa haya yote. Baba, tunaomba ikiwa kuna jambo ambalo litazuia haya maneno yasije yakatufikie, tunaomba uweze kulizuia. Tusamehe dhambi na makosa yetu, maana sisi ni wenye dhambi. Tumeomba haya yote tukiamini katika jina la Yesu aliye Bwana na mkombozi wetu. Asante, tuweze kukaa. Karibu dada.
Good afternoon everyone. Bwana asifiwe. Naona tumekula tukashiba sana. Wengine wamebaki nyumbani hawajakuja. Lakini kwa yote tunamshukuru Mungu kwa vile ametuwezesha tu kuwa hapa siku ya leo. Asubuhi nilisahau kuambia ya kwamba sikuja peke yangu. Nilikuja na rafiki wangu mkubwa ambaye Josephine Akama. Ningependa kumwambia aweze kuwasalimia wote. Amen. So this afternoon we want to talk about drugs and addictions. And since this has been a drug awareness month, I would probably be giving you just an overview of what you may have heard. And in particular, I will be talking mostly about the types of drugs that we have and what the consequences of taking them are and how they affect our brain. So I'll start with just a short introduction on what drug abuse is. So drug abuse can affect anyone. Drug use and abuse is something that is widespread, and it transcends our racial, ethnic, political, social, and economic boundaries, which means it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter your social class, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, drug abuse can affect anyone. So we are told that whether you live in the cities or you live in the rural areas, whether you are a youth, a child, or an adult, rich or poor, whether you are high or mighty or low, you will still be affected by drug abuse. So what is drug abuse? Drug abuse is also referred to as substance or drug abuse. It's also called drug use disorder. It's also called substance use or chemical use disorder. It is an illness that is characterized by a destructive pattern of using a substance that leads to significant problems or distress, including tolerance to or withdrawal from the substance, as well as other problems that the use of that substance can cause for the sufferer, either socially or in terms of their work or school performance. So please project that. Drug abuse may be defined as the habitual use of drugs that are not needed for therapeutic purposes. And what they do is they alter your mood, they affect your state of consciousness, and they also affect your body functions unnecessarily. Continued use of drugs can lead to drug dependence, a state of physical and mental dependence. The commonly used or abused drugs include marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and alcohol. And sometimes sedatives, coffee, and cigarettes can all be used to harmful excesses. So we have signs and symptoms of drug abuse, and we have physical signs or physical warnings, and we also have behavioral warnings. So for physical warnings, you will find the person has bloodshot eyes. They look red. And sometimes if you look at that person closely, the pupils look larger or smaller than normal. Then the person will exhibit changes in appetite or sleep patterns. Sometimes there is sudden weight loss or weight gain. And then there is a deterioration of the physical appearance. If you're used to the way that person looks, you will find that there are some changes in the physical appearance. Then you will find there are unusual smells or breath. And then the person has impaired coordination. For behavioral, the signs and symptoms would be the person exhibits poor work, there is decline in performance, the person has financial problems, secretive behavior, sudden change of friends and associates, accident or trouble prone, he's getting accidents all the time, lack of motivation and withdrawn from people, and the person has unexplained anxiety. The effects of drug abuse can lead to loss of coordination, in summary, poor judgment, slowed reflexes, distorted vision, and memory loss. So how does a person progress until that intake of drugs now becomes drug abuse? The person would start with things like tobacco, inhalants, or drugs that are prescription only. So the person will move from that, start going to alcohol and drug parties. The next thing, the person will start taking marijuana. And after that, the person would progress to cocaine or heroin. And after getting to cocaine or heroin, you'll find the person now is experiencing a lot of problems. Now, there is physical and mental dependence of drugs. In physical dependence, the body has been altered in ways that create cravings for that drug, and this manifests withdrawal symptoms. And in mental dependence, the individual believes that to be in an optimal state of well-being, he has or she has to take that drug. So without taking that drug, the person is feeling uneasy, uncomfortable, wasi-wasi, until he or she takes that drug. Then the person feels that now I am okay. What are the causes of drug abuse, or what leads people to drug abuse? Some of the causes are the following: unemployment. Someone has no job, qualified, but there are no jobs in the market. So the person wakes up in the morning, there's nothing else to do, gets frustrated. The next thing, the person has gone into depression. And how do you get out of your frustrations and your depression? Probably drug abuse or alcohol abuse to help you forget. There are also financial burdens. If you have too much financial burdens, you don't know how to handle them, you can also find yourself in drug abuse. Some of them is social civilization culture. You get your peers who tell you there's something here you can test, it will make you feel better. And within no time, our young people are enticed into that. Some of the ways or things that lead someone to drug abuse is just curiosity and experimentation. Someone just wants to know, how does that thing taste? Or how does it feel after you take that thing? And perhaps he or she sees the friends, maybe when they are high, they are looking happy, they are feeling like, wow, that state looks better. So you are enticed to also want to feel the way your friends are feeling. Peer pressure, addiction, sexual involvement, failure in exams, breakup of relationships, depression, or just illegal relationships. These are just some of the causes of drug abuse. What I would like us to remember is that drug abuse is a very big subject, and we may not be able to cover everything today. So I'll just go through the basics of what I feel can be an overview of what you have gone through the week, the month that has been Drug Awareness Month. So there are different ways in which people take the drugs. It can be oral. They take through the mouth. It can be, of course, alcohol is taken through the mouth. They can take the tablets through the mouth. Others do it through snorting. Snorting is they put, some pipes into their noses and just pull it. I don't know if you have seen, there's something that looks like a pot. They call it shisha. Is it shisha? Yes, that is another way of ingesting drugs. There are some who take it through injections. You will find people having injections and that powder, or they mix it with something and then they inject themselves. And also smoking is also another route of administration. So those are just the four main ways that we know that people use to take drugs. Now, the next thing is, we've talked about drug abuse. Now, what is addiction? Addiction is a condition that results when a person ingests or takes a substance, for example, alcohol, cocaine, or nicotine, or engages in an activity, for example, gambling, sex, pornography, even shopping is an addiction to some people. And these things can be pleasurable, but the continued use or act of them or of these things becomes compulsive and interferes with the ordinary life responsibilities, for example, work. So if you're taking alcohol and you take it in excess, until it interferes with your work, with your relationship, or with whatever you're doing, that's when it becomes an addiction. So people with an addiction do not have control over what they are doing. They actually have no control over it. They have no control on what they are taking, and they have no control on what they are using. Their addiction may reach a point where it is harmful, and addictions that include physical things that we consume, for example, drugs, alcohol, gambling. Chocolate is also something that you can be addicted to, chocolate. We have exercise, the internet. Some people are addicted to their work. Addictions, therefore, refers to a substance dependence or behavioral addiction. That is like gambling. So you just feel like, until I do these things, I don't feel all right. For me to feel all right, I must take this bar of chocolate. For me to feel all right, before I retire to bed, I must watch pornography. For me to feel right, before I face people, I must take a particular drug. That is when it has become an addiction. So when a person is addicted to something, they cannot control how they use it, and they become dependent on it to cope with daily life. A habit may eventually develop into an addiction. So many of us can use substances or become engaged in activities without any significant problems. Some people, however, may experience damaging psychological and or physical effects when their habit becomes an addiction. You've seen people who are addicted to exercise. They must do it every day. So if you are addicted to exercise, or you have to do an exercise every day before you do other things, watch out, you could be addicted to that. If you must take chocolate every day before you sleep, watch out, you could be addicted. So what is the difference between a habit and an addiction? Addiction, there is a psychological, physical component to it, in that the person is unable to control the aspects of the addiction without help because of the mental or physical conditions involved. And for a habit, it is done by choice. The person with the habit can choose to stop and will subsequently stop successfully if they want to. The psychological and physical component is not an issue as it is with an addiction. So addiction leads to feelings of guilt, shame, hopelessness, despair, failure, rejection, anxiety, and humiliation. There are different categories of drug abuse and addiction. So I would like to share just 4 of them. The categories include, we have narcotics, we have hallucinogens, we have depressants, and we have stimulants. So I'll go through each of these categories so that it gives you information. When you look around, you could be having a relative, you could be having someone close to you who may be going through this, and with you having information on the symptoms and the signs you see, it will be easier for you to get help for this person. So for stimulants include cocaine, nicotine, and amphetamine. Cocaine comes in powder form. Nicotine comes in the form of cigars or cigarettes, and amphetamine comes in form of tablets. So stimulants are drugs that stimulate the brain and the central nervous system. It increases the state of mental alertness, and they decrease your appetite. So after taking any of the 3, either cocaine, cigars, or the tablets, which are those drugs, you suddenly become very alert, and you have no appetite for food. And what are the effects of this? What happens to you after you have taken these drugs? The effects of stimulants would include wakefulness, hauna usingizi. You're very alert, and you have increased energy from nowhere. At the same time, there is restlessness, and then there is euphoria. And euphoria would come in a way, maybe the person just decides to burst out laughing with no reason. And the person is hyperactive, laughing, until you would think the person is mad. There is also confusion, reduced appetite, and increased talkativeness. Someone who was quiet suddenly becomes the chatterbox in the family or wherever in the group you are. The person talks and talks and talks, and you're like, what's happening? Why are you talking so much? The other thing is increased breathing and an increased heart rate. And the person would also exhibit elevated blood pressure. So that is it with stimulants. Now, I would like to look at one of those stimulants, and this is cocaine. Cocaine is also known as crack, snow, stardust, Charlie, or nose candy. They call it nose candy. And the reason why they call it nose candy is because you'll find the person who takes cocaine, they will put it either on a tissue, and you will find the person is trying to sniff through the nose. That's why they call it nose candy. So once you take cocaine, the signs and symptoms of abuse of cocaine would include increased agitation. Yani umekasirika tu from nowhere. You are agitated. Hutaki kusikia maneno ya mtu. Then You also have change in concentration and focus, na uko na kahoma kengine akaishi, saa yote ni kusniff kama mtu ana homa. And then you're pacing up and down, movement, unaenda unafika huko kwa gate unarudi. The next ushafika huko car park umerudi. Umefika stairs juu umerudi for no reason, and you're not talking to anyone. So you are agitated. That is how you look like. Now, there are side effects for this cocaine. What does cocaine do to you the moment you put it in through the nose or you inject it to yourself? Your brain is affected. You have an increased risk of stroke. You have reduced attention. Na uko na njaa yenye hakuna mtu anaweza kuisaidia. You know, you cannot satisfy that hunger that you have. And then you can't sleep, you have insomnia, and you have lethargy. You don't care about whatever is happening around you. Cocaine also affects your throat. Your throat is always sore and hoarse voice. Your lungs are affected, and you have chest pain, you have asthmatic symptoms, and you have bronchospasm. That is your bronchioles have a problem. So unajisikia hauko sawa, wewe ni mgonjwa. Then you have fever. You feel like uko na fever, your temperature is very high, and then your nose is discharging. Unajua ile discharge ya mucus yenye iko clear, inatoka saa yote. And then your teeth are not normal. If you look at people who take cocaine, you will find their teeth have a problem. Either they have cracks, or you would see that they are discolored in a very interesting way, even up to some black stuff on their teeth. And your heart is also affected. It has an increased risk of infarction. So your heart would be beating so fast, and it could be, it could affect you. And your skin is also not the same. If you look at the skin of someone who has taken cocaine, it's different. It looks, it doesn't look like a normal kind of skin. You would think maybe the person has a skin condition. So the next thing is nicotine after cocaine. When you take nicotine, your blood is affected. You have increased blood clotting tendencies. Your lungs still have that bronchospasm. You have spasms in your bronchioles. Your muscles, you have tremors in your muscles, and you feel a lot of pain in your muscles. And then in your system, you would feel a lot of nausea, a dry mouth, dyspepsia, diarrhea, and heartburns. And then you will feel like in your head, there's a lot of lightheadedness. Sometimes you feel headaches. You have sleep disturbances, abnormal dreams, irritability, and dizziness most of the time. Your heart has increased or decreased heart rate, increased blood pressure, and you also have coronary artery constriction, and it also affects your endocrine system. You have insulin resistance as part of the things that would happen to you if you're using nicotine. How is nicotine addictive? Over time, nicotine would affect your neurotransmitter in the brain, changing the way certain brain cells work. So when one stops using nicotine, the changes remains for a while until the brain reverts back to the normal state. These changes are what causes the withdrawal symptoms, which are characteristics of addiction. So the other thing are those tablets or the drugs that we saw. These drugs would also affect your brain, they affect your muscles, and they also affect your kidneys. You also have sexual dysfunction, weight problems, skin abscesses, and involuntary muscle spasms. So all the time you feel like your muscle is tweaking. All this is because of taking those drugs. So the person who also takes these drugs will have increased body temperature, a dry mouth, increased blood pressure, faster breathing, decreased appetite, and euphoria, as we had said earlier. Now we go to depressants. That's the second part or category of drugs. So depressants are substances that reduces the normal body activity, function, or an instinctive desire such as appetite for food. It is also known as downers. So from that high of nicotine, depressants do not act as the stimulants. Instead, they reduce your normal body activity, while the stimulants would increase your body activity, but stimulants do what? Decrease it. So classification of depressants, we have alcohol, we have cannabis, opioids, and benzodiazepines. These are different types of drugs. So the effects of these depressants, we have highly addictive. They are highly addictive. They produce sedation, dizziness, hypnosis, anxiety, and permanently damage a developing fetus. That is, if you take them and you're pregnant, the depressants will damage your expected baby. Now, what are the effects of alcohol? Alcohol does many things to our brain. I don't know if you have seen, you have a picture of how a brain looks like. Here at the front, we have what we call the frontal lobe. Then at the center, we have the parietal lobe. At the back, we have occipital lobe. And under that, we have cerebellum. And there is the brain stem, which is right at the back of your neck. And then on the side, we have the temporal lobe. So the effects of alcohol on the brain include headaches, blackouts, delusions, paranoia, forgetfulness, impaired judgment, decline in IQ, and or death. So for the frontal lobe, alcohol can cause you to lose your ability to make decisions. It also makes you to lose coordination and to lose your emotional control. Now, the effect to the temporal lobe, it can make you have slurred speech and impaired hearing. For the parietal lobe, which is the middle here, alcohol can slow your reaction time, and it can also cause you to shake. For the occipital lobe, alcohol can cause you to have blurred vision, decreased peripheral vision. And on the cerebellum, alcohol can disturb your coordination and your balance. And on the brain stem, alcohol can lead you to blackouts, to having blackouts and an increased heart rate. So you can see alcohol affects all parts of your brain. We also have hallucinogens. That is another category. Hallucinogens are substances that alter sensory processing in the brain, and they cause perceptual disturbances, and they also cause changes in thought processing and depersonalization. So there are different types of hallucinogens. We have things that they call LSD, peyote, and mescaline. Then they also have magic mushroom, ketamine. Then there's also something called datura or Jimson weed. Now, how do hallucinogens work? So these hallucinogens can be used in many different ways. You can take it in a pill form, you can smoke it, you can eat it, or you can drink it. It all depends on the hallucinogen and the way it is formed. Once the hallucinogen is in your body, chemicals like serotonin and acetylcholine interfere with neurotransmitters and cause hallucinations. A hallucinogen high can last for at least 30 minutes and as long as 4 hours, depending on the one that you take and the amount that you take. So what are the side effects of hallucinogens? They cause systemic problems. You could have hypothermia, where you feel hot or cold anytime, and then it also causes fever. Hypothermia is when 1 minute you're feeling it is so hot. The next minute it is so cold. Then when you just put on your sweater, again you feel so hot, so you have to remove it. So it is just hot, cold, hot, cold. Then your pupils dilate in your eyes. Your mouth has a lot of saliva production, and then saliva and mucus production in the nose, and then your jaw keeps on clenching. You know, hapa hivi unasikia tu ni kama jaw unai-clench hivi. And then your skin has goosebumps and perspiration and paresthesia. So blood has elevated sugar levels, and your muscles have tremors and weakness, and your heart has increased heart rate, and you have nausea. So as you can see, some people would use the hallucinogens differently, and they would come in different forms, as we said. And if you can see the picture that we had, just go to the next one, please. Is he there? Move to the next slide, please. Okay, as she moves to the next one, you can see how the eye looks like, and there is also someone there who's trying to ingest that hallucinogen by putting something on the tongue that just dissolves in the tongue. So let's move on. The next drug I would like to talk about is marijuana. So marijuana is a common illicit drug, and its street names include ganja, hashish, and bang. So the most common symptoms of someone who has taken marijuana would include dizziness, a dry mouth, drowsiness, and lower concentration. So the person would exhibit euphoria, blurred vision, red eye, and headache. And it is rare they would exhibit anxiety, ataxia, and tachycardia. Tachycardia is heart failure, and ataxia is loss of coordination. Now, How do all these drugs affect your brain? What we know is that your brain is who you are. It is what allows you to think, breathe, move, speak, and feel. It's just about 3 pounds of gray and white matter, and this rests inside your skull, and it is your own personal mission control. The brain is always working even when you're sleeping. So information from your environment makes its way to the brain, which receives, processes, and integrates it so that you can survive and function under all sorts of changing circumstances and learn from experience. So this information comes from both outside your body, like what your eyes see and what your skin feels, and from inside, for example, what your heart rate is and your body temperature. So the brain is made up of many parts that all work together as a team. And each of these different parts has a specific and important job to do. So when drugs enter the brain, they interfere with the normal tasks and can eventually lead to changes on how well it works. So over time, drug use can lead to addiction, a devastating brain disease. When people can't stop using drugs even when they really want to, and even after, it causes terrible consequences in their lives or to their health and to other parts of their body. It is very sad. So how do drugs affect your brain? So drugs are just chemicals. So when someone puts chemicals into their body by either smoking, injecting, or inhaling, or eating them, they tap into the brain's communication system and tamper with the way the nerves work. They also tamper with how the normal cells work, how they send, receive, or process information. So different drugs, because of their chemical structures, work differently. So there are at least 2 ways that drugs work in the brain. The first one, our bodies have special cells that are called neurons, and these carry messages back and forth to the brain. So drugs, when you take them, would change the way these neurons work or talk to each other. And the changes can cause you to act in ways that you normally wouldn't. So drugs can make you sick and can even kill you. Depending on which drug you take, your breathing could become dangerously slow or even stop. And this is called an overdose. Other drugs can give you heart attacks, cancer, or lung problems. So the drugs also imitate the brain's natural chemical messenger. So instead of you receiving, your body reacting to its own natural messenger, you start receiving messages from the drugs that you have taken, and you react to them. So overstimulating the reward circuits of the brain, that means when your brain is not able to use its natural way of communicating messages to your body and from your body to your brain, it is very, very sad. So we have drugs that cause problems both for brains and our bodies. And what I can say is that too much of some drugs like cocaine and methamphetamine cause nerve cells to release too much dopamine. Dopamine is a natural neurotransmitter, or it prevents the normal recycling of dopamine in our bodies. And this leads to exaggerated messages in the brain, and this causes problems with communication and like the difference between someone whispering in your ear versus someone shouting in a microphone like I am doing. So we also have drugs giving people a high or the pleasure effect. So some time back, scientists had thought that that high that someone feels or that happiness after using drugs would be the only thing that the drugs affect, that they make you just feel high and that is all. But over time, research has shown that drugs like nicotine, cocaine, and marijuana affect the brain's reward circuit, which is part of the limbic system. And when you take them, you will find that you're not able to think properly, you're not able to move normally, and you're not able to do things or think clearly. So other things that the drugs do is they cause you to have a repeat effect. Our brains are wired to make sure that we will repeat survival activities like eating by connecting those activities with feeling good. So when you eat, you feel good, and you would want to go back and do what? And eat. So whenever this circuit is kick-started, the brain notes that something important is happening that needs to be remembered. So you're eating, and your brain registers that you're doing something nice, and so your brain should remember this kind of activity. So what the brain does is it teaches you to repeat or do this again and again without ever thinking. I don't know if any of us thinks when you're going to eat. It just comes automatically because it is a good thing. You enjoy doing it, so you do it even without thinking. So because drugs come in and hijack that same communication circuit, when you take a drug, it registers as if it is something nice that you're doing. And it tells your brain that this is something good, it can be repeated. And that is why you find someone who has started taking drugs, over time becomes addicted, and now it reaches a point that when this person wants to stop, the brain registers that that was a pleasurable thing to do. And that is why you will find someone running back to take that drug so that he or she can feel good. So after repeated drug use, the brain starts to adjust. And how does it adjust? The brain is, it feels like when you're kind of turning down volume on a radio or on something, there are some drugs that are very toxic. So when you take them and then you stop taking them, it's like you had switched on something and now you're switching it off. And what happens when you switch it off? The effect of that, when you withdraw that drug, you may die. It is very easy to die because now your brain is activated, your nerves are activated, anxiously waiting for you to take this drug, and you're not taking it. So it causes your body to rebel, and the result may be you may die if you don't take it. So this person who's stimulated the whole body feels flat, lifeless, and depressed, and is unable to enjoy things that once brought pleasure to him or her. So what this person needs is to get that drug so that he or she feels normal. And that effect is called tolerance. There are also long-term effects of drug use. Drug use can lead to dramatic changes in our neurons and brain circuits, and these changes can stay even after the person has stopped taking drugs. So this is likely to happen when a drug is taken over and over again. And what will happen to the brain when a person now stops taking these drugs? You have been taking the drugs over and over again, and now you have reached somewhere and you say, I need to stop doing this. So you go and you start your journey. And the first day you may go well, but the second day you will start exhibiting those withdrawal symptoms. And the withdrawal symptoms are not good, because what they do is that they make you sick, and you become very sick. Kindly show the next slide. The pink. Slide 30. So what's the time you want to withdraw, what happens to you? You start experiencing dramatic changes in sensations and feelings. You have an altered sense of self. You don't know who you are. You swing rapidly from one emotion to another. Slide 30. 30. You swing rapidly from one emotion to another. You feel several different emotions at once. You have an altered sense of time. You don't know when it is daytime. You don't know when it is night. And you have crossover senses. So you really don't know what to do with yourself. You're confused. If you look at that picture, it will just show you that you're not yourself. There are so many things happening in your body. That is how it feels like when you're experiencing those withdrawal symptoms. Now, you can die when you take an overdose of drugs. Long-term use of tobacco products can cause cancer, which may result in death. Withdrawal symptoms can be so severe that you have increased heart rate, you have all those kind of things that I talked about happening in your body. You may also have low blood pressure or high blood pressure, and you will end up dying. So as we say, drug addiction is a brain disease. They change the structure of the brain and how it works, as we said. And these brain changes can be long-lasting and can lead to harmful behaviors. They can create and spark triggers that bring on drug cravings. This makes it hard to be around your triggers even if you've been drug-free for a long time. During the time that someone is taking drugs, the things that are triggers are those things that you would see and you decide you're going to take the drugs. And this could include, a trigger can be a place, it can be the company you keep or a person, it can just be something, it can be a smell, it can be a feeling, it can be a picture of something, it can be stress, or it can be memories. So during that time when you're trying to pull yourself from drugs and you come across a trigger, it has been researched that over 75% of people who meet their triggers will go back to their addictions. What is the treatment for people who are taking drugs and are in addiction? The treatments that are there only help people to manage the addiction, but there is no cure. Drug addiction and drug abuse is considered as a chronic disease. It lasts a long time and needs to be managed with regular treatment. If people follow treatment plans, they can go for many years leading healthy lives. So treatment is effective in helping people achieve recovery. It can include medication or counseling. When someone takes an overdose, the risk is very high that you may go back to using the same drug. Your body can't handle the same amount of drug you used before. This means that you are on the path to recovery. There's a certain amount of drugs you used to take per day. When you relapse or go back, when you meet your trigger and relapse, you will not take the same dose or the same amount of drugs you are taking. This time, you will take more than you used to take. So there are two different types of treatment for people. It could be behavioral change or medication. Behavioral change would be you getting help from either counselors or in a recovery place to stop the use of drugs and to keep yourself away from people who use drugs. There are medications that help people to manage their cravings for some drugs. For example, tobacco, alcohol, heroin, and other opioids. Those who become addicted to drugs need long-term treatment, and many times repeated treatments. I don't know if you have had experience or you have heard your friends talk about people who've been using drugs in their family. They would take them for rehabilitation. And when the person comes from the rehab, the person will be looking okay and will stop for some time. But the moment this person will get a trigger, there's a relapse. And the person goes deeper and becomes even worse than he was or she was. And taken back again to rehabilitation, the person would again follow the steps, do everything, come back outside. If the person has no plan for his life or no plan on what to do, there is a likelihood he may or she may relapse again. So it is a continuous thing until a time when true treatment would be reached. So if you are asked to go for treatment, as a parent or as a guardian, you may want the people you guard to go for treatment. But if they are not psychologically prepared to be removed from that addiction, you're doing nothing. The treatment, the treatment has to come, or the request to get treatment has to come from the victim or from the person who has been taking drugs. If you as a parent take the person, ataenda tu, ataka rehabilitation, but after the 3 months or the 6 months, atarudi nyumbani na ataendelea na drugs zake. So it is important to talk to this person, prepare the person so that tell them of the benefits of getting treatment. And if it comes from the person saying, I want to get treated, then that will be okay. Now, what would I like us to remember? There are certain points I would like us to remember of what we have gone through this afternoon. Drug addiction, number one, is a chronic disease that is characterized by drug seeking and use and it is compulsive. It is difficult to control, despite it having harmful consequences. Brain changes that occur over time with drugs use challenge an addicted person's self-control and interferes with the ability to resist intense urges to take drugs. This is why drug addiction is also a relapsing disease. Relapse is the return to drug use after an attempt to stop. Relapse indicates the need for more or different treatment. So most drugs affect the brain's reward circuit by flooding it with the chemical messenger dopamine. Surges of dopamine in the reward circuit cause the reinforcement of pleasurable but unhealthy activities, leading people to repeat the behavior again and again. Over time, the brain adjusts to the excess dopamine, which reduces the high that the person feels compared to the high they felt when first taking the drug. This effect, as I said earlier, is known as tolerance. So they might take more of the drug trying to achieve the same dopamine high. What does this mean? It means that over time when someone has taken drugs, the drugs become part of their bodies, if I can say it in simple terms. And once it becomes part of their bodies or part of their system, when they take the same drug, they don't feel anything. And for them to feel something and achieve that which they want to achieve, they have to take more or a higher dose of the same drug that they took. So what the brain would do, it would adjust to this fact that you're keeping on taking more and more. So if the person goes back, the brain tells this person that, no, this is not enough. Do what? Take more. So brothers and sisters, there's no single factor that can predict whether a person will become addicted to drugs. I cannot look at you and say, hey, wewe unakaa, utachukua drugs. Or I look at a young person and say, huyu anakaa, atachukua drugs. A combination of genetic, environmental, and developmental factors influence risk of addiction. The more risk factors a person has, the greater the chance that taking drugs can lead to addiction. Drug addiction is treatable and can be managed successfully. We say there is no cure, but it can be treated. So the good news today is that drug use and addiction are preventable. And we would like to urge teachers, parents, and healthcare providers to take leading roles in educating young people to prevent drug use and addiction. You have seen what it does to your brain. You have seen the effects or the consequences that this may bring. So for those who take drugs and have tried to stop but cannot, the urge for taking drugs is too strong. Yet they know that these drugs are causing them harm. If a person feels that way, that person could be addicted. And you as a guardian or as a parent or as a friend, there are some questions that you may need to ask. If you suspect someone, you can ask the following questions. You can ask them, do you think about drugs a lot? You can ask them, did you ever try to stop or cut down on your drug usage but couldn't? You can ask them, have you ever thought you couldn't fit in or have a good time without the use of drugs? You can ask them, do you ever use drugs because you are upset or angry at other people? You can ask them, have you ever used a drug without knowing what it was or what it would do to you? You could ask them, have you ever taken one drug to get over the effects of another? You could also ask, have you ever made mistakes at a job or at a school because you were using drugs? Does the thought of running out of drugs scare you? Have you ever stolen drugs or stolen to pay for drugs? Have you ever been arrested or in the hospital because of your drug use? Have you ever overdosed on drugs? Has using drugs hurt your relationship with other people? If the answer to some or all of these questions is yes, then the person might have an addiction. People from all different backgrounds can get an addiction. Addiction can happen at any age, but it usually starts when a person is young. So, brothers and sisters, is there a cure for addiction? Unfortunately, there is no cure for addiction. But there is hope. There may not be a cure, but there is treatment. And this treatment could be through behavioral counseling, medications, and many other things that have been put in place. We have a drug problem in our society. We even have it even in our church. What role are you who's seated here listening to me today going to do to help those who are addicted, to help those who might be potentially addicted, or to help those who want to get out of it? It is our role as Christians. It is our role because the Bible tells us in the book of 1 Corinthians, and 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 and 20, it says, do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own? For you are bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. We were bought with a price. We don't belong to ourselves. Your neighbor who's seated next to you is bought with a price. The chokora you see out there was bought with a price. The small boy you see sniffing glue out there was bought with a price. The people you avoid when you see them, when they are suffering the bad effects of drug addiction on the streets, were also bought with a price. What are you going to do to change society? You as an individual, instead of avoiding that person, what is it that you can do to help that person get off that addiction? What can you do starting from your church? What programs do you have in place to help your young people not to get addicted, not to join drug abuse? From the villages where you come from, what can you do? You have the information. Think about these things and see what you can do. May God bless you.
Asante sana Dada Phyllis for the presentation. Ninaamini ya kwamba tumepata kitu kuhusiana na haya mambo ya drug abuse and addiction, na tumejua ni aina gani ya madawa ambayo yanasababisha haya yote. Nina imani ya kwamba Mungu atatusaidia ili tuweze kufanya jambo kwa hayo yote. So ninapoita choristers tafadhali tufunge. Napoasha in a few minutes for the songs. Tuimbe number 111. Number 111. Simame tafadhali. Simame.
Tabibu mkuu huyu, Yesu mwenye huruma, atuleta faraja, Yesu Mwokozi wetu. Imbeni malaika, sifa za Bwana wetu. Jina la pekee kwetu ni la Yesu Bwana. Mwana kondoo msifuni, msifuni Mwokozi. Hatia zote na dhambi uziondoa Yesu. Imbeni malaika, sifa za Bwana wetu. Jina la pekee kwetu ni la Yesu Bwana. Hakuna jina jingine linalofaa sifa au kutufurahisha isipokuwa lake. Imbeni malaika, sifa za Bwana wetu. Jina la pekee kwetu ni la Yesu Bwana. Naye atakapokuja na utukufu wake, tutafurahi milele kukaa kwake Bwana. Imbeni malaika, sifa za Bwana wetu. Jina la pekee
tuingie kwenye maombi, tuweze kutulia, kwa sababu baada ya maombi choristers mtaendelea kwa nyimbo mbili, so naomba msiende mbali. So tuamini na tuombe. Baba na Mungu wetu aishie juu mbinguni, tumekuja kwako mara nyingine tukikushukuru, maana wewe ndiye muumba wetu. Baba, wewe ndiye unatupa afya njema. Angalia Baba, tumeangalia yale madhara ambayo yanaletwa na madawa ambayo yanatumika vibaya. Tunaamini ya kwamba wewe tu ndiye tabibu mkuu ambaye atatusaidia tuweze kujiondoa katika hii hali ambayo si ya kupendeza. Baba, imewafunga watoto wako, imewaharibu, imeharibu familia nyingi. Hata vijana ambao walikuwa watumaini, ambao walikuwa na tumaini, wameweza kupoteza tumaini kwa sababu ya haya madawa. Baba, tunaomba unapotembelea watoto wako uweze kuwazuru hata wale ambao wamenazuliwa ama ambao wamefungwa katika hii minyororo ya madawa, ili Baba mwishowe wao wamebadilika kabisa, waweze kuungana na watoto wako urejea hapo mara ya pili. Baba, tunaamini ya kwamba na tunajua kwako hakuna jambo ambalo ni gumu. Zidi kupigania watoto wako, uweze kuwaelekeza katika njia ambazo ni nzuri, ambazo ni za kiroho. Baba, kwa njia moja au nyingine tumeenda kinyume na mapenzi yako, tunaomba msamaha utokao kwako, ili Baba tuweze kukubalika machoni pako. Baba, tunapotamatisha hiki kipindi, wacha Roho wako Mtakatifu atuelekeze katika kila jambo, na hata vipindi ambavyo vimebaki uweze kutuongoza hadi tamati. Wacha mapenzi yako yatendeke, na umbariki dada PHILISE kwa yale ambayo anaendelea kutenda. Baba, tunaamini ya kwamba umetusikia na utatujibu sawa sawa na mapenzi yako, maana tumeomba katika jina la Yesu aliye Bwana na mkombozi wetu. Asante.
Asante. Tutaendelea na uimbaji kidogo.
Wacha dada aweze kuwaomba salamu, maana tukienda katika kipindi kingine hatutaonana tena.
Hamjambo tena. Tungependa kuwashukuru sana kwa kutupea nafasi kuja kanisani mwenu. Tumefurahia kuwa nanyi tangu asubuhi hadi wakati huu, na sasa tungependa kuelekea nyumbani. Wangapi wangependa kutupea salamu? Asanteni sana. Mungu azidi kuwabariki.
Asante sana. Sasa choristers, mtaimba nyimbo mbili ndio tuweze kwenda kipindi kingine. Asante.
Asante. Tutaimba wimbo namba 161, kisha tutaimba wimbo namba 183, kisha tutakuwa tunapata mwelekezo mwingine. Wimbo namba 161, piga panda.
Piga panda ya makelele, Yesu aja tena. Ipaze sauti, imba sana, Yesu aja tena. Anakuja, 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 Yesu aja tena. Itoe mwangwiza na vilima, Yesu aja tena. Yu aja kwa Yesu aja tena,
anakuja,
anakuja, anakuja, anakuja. Yesu aja tena, itangaze mahali popote, Yesu aja tena. Mwokozi aliyetufilia, Yesu aja tena,
anakuja,
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 anakuja.
Yesu aja tena. Kuona machafuko twajua, Yesu aja tena. Mataifa yakasiriana, Yesu aja tena.
Anakuja,
anakuja, anakuja, Yesu aja tena. Maranatha, utuombee, Yesu aja tena. Taabu jaa, utulilia, Yesu aja tena. Anakuja, anakuja, Yesu aja tena.
asante. Wimbo namba 183, 183. Yesu anaporudi, furaha na raha tutapata.
F.
Asante sana wana choristers kwa kazi nzuri, na kwa wakati huu tuko na dakika 30 za kuenda katika idara zetu. So ni saa 10:40. Ikifika saa 11:10 tutakuwa tumekusanyika hapa kwa kufunga. Najua youths mtaenda huko juu, akina mama hapa na wazee watakaa huko nje. Tingi na watoto tayari wako kwa madarasa yao. Ningependa tusimame tuombe ili tuwawanyike.